We are, as always, working in the amazing journal by Nadia. Nadia's Instagram is linked below. I've already chosen this page and I've just discovered something pretty cool. So if I just have this laying flat on my table, the pages go like this, obviously, but I want them flat. So I need something underneath which is going to give me this kind of shape. And if I just put books under it, they're flat, and that's not going to help. But I just tried something and it's so cool. Maybe if you happen to have one of these things, don't you just love him? Need more sleep. It's one of these things you put on your lap to work on a laptop or tablet or whatever. And on the back side, this one has this material, you know, which you can shape. So I thought, let's try and mold it into the shape I need it, pushing everything to the middle. And that way, if I lay my journal on it, then my pages actually are pretty flat. And today I want to create a double spread in a style that I used to do maybe 2.5 years ago a lot, which was very much inspired by Marta from Maremi SmallArt. I will link Marta's channel down below in case you don't know it. So I already have this to start with, which is gorgeous. This was already in the journal made by Nadia. These are mine. And I want to start off by just adding some textures. So I have this amazing mesh tape, which provides such fun texture. I'm guessing you can get this in any hardware store. Next, we can add some masking tape. And I'm going to tape it down, trying to create some folds in it as well, because I do want that texture. Maybe you know I've been decluttering and reorganizing my craft closet recently. I'm still in the process. It's an ongoing series. So if you missed that first episode, I will link that for you below. If you need some inspiration to declutter your own craft supplies, maybe that will help. I don't know. But while decluttering, I found a lot of things that I have kind of forgotten about, because of course the issue is if you have so much supplies, you're gonna forget about some of it. Typically, you kind of always use the same things. So when I was decluttering this drawer of tapes, I was thinking like, wow, I haven't really used these in such a long time, and why not? So I'm just more or less putting them randomly on the page, trying to create some beautiful texture. And then I also found these. Why not add it to this page? We're not going to see the color anymore, I think, once I'm done. Okay, let's put this somewhere, maybe up here. Hopefully we're going to see some of this texture. And then I thought, why not add some lace? Specifically lace maybe where we're not so happy with the color. Like this pink is not likely one that I'm going to use a lot. So why not add it here? Paint over it or put some gesso over it. Let's try some different kinds of lace, different shapes as well. Trying to again get out of my comfort zone and not only use rectangles. I also have this one here, which I'm super interested in seeing what that would look like. Maybe we add it up here. It's also nice to kind of have a cluster of texture, to maybe not spread it out throughout all the page, but to like have a cluster up here, and then I have one here, and maybe I can make this into one by adding some more lace. Next, I'm going to add some gesso. I would say this is kind of like a medium thickness, but you know, you used what you have and you don't need to use gesso. You can also use white paint or some other type of paint. I'm just going to take my brush and cover it. I'm not planning on covering my whole page in white gesso, but I do want to cover up any of the colors that I can see here now, including the tape. It's so fun sometimes to just play with your supplies, just experiment in your journal, not have a plan as to where it's going, you know, how it's going to look like in the end, but just play with your supplies. I enjoy that very much, and it kind of takes the pressure off of having like the perfect page at the end. Sometimes it's really just about the process in itself. During that second declutter session, I think that video is actually coming after this one, I also found a Crackle Medium, which I haven't used in forever. It's a chalky finish. So I want to try some of that here as well on this page. I think that's a perfect page to experiment with it. It is super liquid, so I don't know how well this is going to work. I thought I would do this with a spatula, but it is so thin. Yeah, I think this needs a paintbrush actually. Okay, I don't want to put it everywhere. Let's just put it in some areas. I'm also not sure how thick this needs to be. I know it shouldn't be too thick and it shouldn't be too thin. So it's about experimenting, I guess, again. I am super curious to see what this will look like, if it will actually do some crackling. I'm very skeptical. I usually am not lucky with the crackle effect, but probably I'm not doing it right. I don't think it's really a fault of the products I'm using. It's a couple of hours later and it has dried maybe 80%. And as I feared, the Crackle Paste did exactly nothing. You see the shine here? That's the Crackle Paste. There is not a single crack. So I'm guessing I would have had to add it thicker, but that's very hard when it's so liquid. So I don't know how to use this. Instead, I will continue with my thicker gesso. And if you want a thicker paste and you don't have a thicker gesso, you can always add baby powder or starch or even fine-grained sand to your gesso to make it thicker if that's what you want. So I want some more texture. So I am going to just add some more gesso. And we can also use some kind of a pokey tool to add some more interest into these wet spots, like just making some random marks, for example, like some scribbling. So this is all dried in the meantime, and we have a lot of beautiful texture going on here now. So next I want to add some coffee here. I have some instant coffee. This is like my regular mixture that I would use for dyeing pages for my junk journal. And then I have this, which is a lot darker, which is an espresso, like a regular espresso. And I've let this stand here for probably a week or so, always stirring it to make sure it doesn't get moldy. And this is going to be a lot more dark. So let's try to experiment with those a little bit. So I'm going to take a paintbrush, just add some. And of course this will go into all these little cracks and make them more visible. Okay, now let's try to add some of this darker coffee. Just in drops, you can see the difference. This is beautiful. And then we can use a paper towel to just kind of take some of it off where we don't want as much. Like maybe here in the spine, I don't want my spine to get soaked. And I will let this air dry again, because if I dry this with my heat gun, it's going to blow all over the place, which would be also an actually, you know what? I'm going to do that because that might actually be a more interesting look. I'm super happy with how this is turning out so far. I have also recently found my beautiful glass calligraphy pen, and I'm going to use that with my black Indian ink. Maybe we can draw some circles around this here. I've never tried that before. I don't know how well it's going to work, especially on this uneven surface. But yeah, it's working and I love it. Love it that I can't control it. It's like a flower, isn't it? Maybe we'll make a dark inside. And then we could even draw a stem. Could just do like some random mark making. And maybe we can also get some ink splatters with this. I decided to switch to voiceover at this point so I could speed up the rest of the process since there was a lot of layering going on. When I came back to this spread with fresh eyes, I did not like the stems anymore, so I decided to cover them up first with white gesso and then with my beloved jade green using my fingers. Next, I took 2 different shades of turquoise water-soluble Stabilo woody pencils and scribbled around with those and then added a bit more gesso to blend the lines. I wanted some more color, so I added a golden yellow using my water-soluble wax pastels, spritzed water and again blended with my fingers. I also added some orange wax pastels, some more gesso and kept blending until I was happy with this step. For more contrast, I tried adding some black splatters with my black woody pencil, but that didn't work well and also was very messy, so I reverted to the classic method of using watercolor instead. So these butterflies are to be my focal points, but of course they were much too new and shiny, so I needed to sand them down so I could grunge them up a bit. So I sprayed them with coffee, and since that didn't show well, I added walnut stain distress oxide directly from the ink pad. So once that had dried, I also added my rusty hinge on top, followed by wild honey for some highlights. Next, I tried adding the black woody pencil to the edges for more grunge, but when I spritzed water to blend it in better, of course the oxide also moved. And once it all dried, it was hardly visible anymore. So I repeated the whole process with the oxides again. Although water I had used soaked the wing so much that one of the wing tips broke off. So I just cut the second off as well to make them even again. Placing the butterflies onto my spread, I decided they need to pop more, so I added some gesso underneath them. And after gluing them down, I added some shading with my carbon sketch pencil, which I then softened using both my water brush and my paper stump. I felt it definitely needed more contrast, so I added some more splattering, first with my dark coffee, then with thinned down gesso, and lastly even some black watercolor. I wanted to add a sentiment and decided the perfect one is be brave, since experimenting in your beloved journal definitely takes courage. Don't you agree? The sheet I cut it from is from my own shop. You can find it linked in the description box if you want to have a look. So instead of gluing it straight to the page, I wanted to frame it, so I glued it to the beautiful scrap paper I used for dyeing the butterflies, which I inked up before adding it to the page. Lastly, I felt it needed more pops of color to finish it off, and so I added some plus signs with my yellow wax pastel, and I must admit I am quite happy with my mixed media experiment. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like this one where I add pre-made ephemera to this journal. Mwah, mwah.